You know those moments where you say something so awful that you can't take it back? Well, I had one of those. And honestly, even though everything fell apart afterward, I still don't know if I was totally wrong. Let me explain. I'm Rebecca, 32, and I'm sitting here in my Missouri apartment trying to figure out how my life did such a complete 180. 4 years ago, I met Bruce at the Sound House, this super popular live music venue downtown. I wasn't even supposed to be there that night. My friend Kaylee dragged me out after a terrible date stood me up. Bruce was behind the sound booth, and something about the way he carried himself just caught my attention. He wasn't my usual type. I typically went for the finance bros with their fancy watches and BMWs. But Bruce had this quiet confidence, you know? He knew his stuff and didn't need to show off about it. Bruce caught me watching him during the band's set and came over during their break. Instead of using some cheesy pickup line, he started explaining how he'd adjusted the acoustics to complement the lead singer's unique vocal range. I had no idea what he was talking about, but his passion was kind of hot. We ended up talking until closing time, and he asked for my number. I'll be honest, when he told me he was a sound engineer, I wasn't exactly jumping for joy. Like, what even is that? But then he started taking me to all these concerts, introducing me to local musicians, getting us backstage passes. Suddenly my Instagram was full of VIP events and behind-the-scenes moments. My followers ate it up. I was just a personal trainer at Pure Fitness. But dating Bruce made me feel like I was part of something bigger. We moved pretty fast after that. 6 months in, we moved in together. A year later, we bought this cute little house in the suburbs. Nothing fancy, but it had potential. Bruce was smart with money, almost too smart sometimes. Like, he'd insist on saving 30% of his income when I wanted to redo the kitchen. But I can't complain too much because his stability meant I could focus on building my personal brand. I had this dream of becoming a fitness influencer, and while I wasn't exactly blowing up online, I was slowly gaining followers. The wedding was small. Bruce's idea, of course. He said we should save for a down payment instead of blowing it all on one day. Sometimes I'd scroll through my feeds, seeing these gorgeous destination weddings, and feel a little cheated. But then Bruce would come home excited about working with some up-and-coming band, and I'd get to be the first to post about them before they hit it big. Bruce's career was really taking off. He started getting calls from bigger venues, traveling with some pretty well-known artists. I loved telling my gym clients about my husband working with their favorite bands. It made me feel special, you know? I handled making our house look perfect for Instagram and maintaining our social connections, while Bruce brought home the money and industry connects. It worked. But Bruce was always so careful with everything. Like, frustratingly careful. We'd be at industry parties, and he'd stick to water while everyone else was living it up. Or he'd pass on buying new equipment that would have helped his career because he wanted to research more options. I kept telling him sometimes you have to take risks to make it big, but he never listened. I remember this one night about 6 months ago when he came home excited about being asked to run sound for this huge music festival. Like, major headliners. Supposedly going to be the biggest event our city had seen. Bruce had worked with the production company before, but this was different. This was his chance to prove himself at the next level. He kept talking about all the opportunities it could lead to, how it would change everything for us. Looking back now, he was right about things changing. Just not in the way either of us expected. Sometimes I wonder if I'd done anything differently that morning. Pushed him to double-check the equipment, made him stay home because he had a headache, anything. If we'd still be the same couple we were back then. But I guess that's the thing about life-changing moments. You never see them coming until it's too late. I was at the gym with a client when I got the call. Some production assistant, talking so fast I could barely understand her. All I caught was accident, hospital, and Bruce. I remember dropping my water bottle, telling my client there was an emergency, and driving to Metro General in a daze. The whole time I kept thinking this had to be some kind of mistake. Bruce was always so careful, annoyingly careful. But there he was, lying in the emergency room, looking nothing like my husband. They told me a lighting rig had collapsed during setup. Bruce had tried to push another crew member out of the way and ended up taking the brunt of it himself. 3 surgeries, they said. Months of physical therapy, a broken leg, severe back injuries. I honestly stopped listening after a while. All I could think about was how this would change everything we'd built. The first few weeks, I really tried. I did everything right. Took time off work, learned how to help him move from the bed to his wheelchair, kept track of his medications, I even started one of those online fundraising things, though it didn't get nearly as much attention as I thought it would. But watching Bruce, who used to be so active and capable, struggle just to get to the bathroom, it started wearing on me. Workers' comp only covered like 60% of his salary, and the medical bills kept piling up. I had to cut back on my client hours to take care of him, which meant less money and way less time for my social media presence. My engagement numbers tanked. No more backstage stories, no more VIP events, no more exclusive concerts. Just endless doctor's appointments and physical therapy sessions that seemed to go nowhere. Bruce got really down, which I guess I understand. But he just laid there, watching Netflix or staring at his phone, barely talking to me. When he did talk, it was always about pain levels or insurance paperwork, or how sorry he was. Like, I get it, but sorry doesn't pay the bills or get me back the life I was building. I started spending more time at the gym when I could. It was the only place that still felt normal. My friends would invite me out, and I'd go sometimes, just to remember what it felt like to not be a caretaker. Bruce never complained about it directly, but he'd make these little comments about how he missed me, or how quiet the house was, as if I was supposed to sit there and watch him mope all day. Then came the news that really broke me. Bruce's doctor said there was a good chance he'd never be able to do the same kind of physical work again. Something about nerve damage and chronic pain. They started talking about career counseling and vocational rehabilitation. Like, what does that even mean? All Bruce's connections, all our industry friends, everything we'd built, gone, just like that. I remember sitting in our kitchen after that appointment, looking at our mortgage statement, then at my declining savings account, then at Bruce dozing off in his wheelchair, and feeling this wave of... I don't even know what to call it. Panic? Resentment? I'd signed up to be the wife of a successful sound engineer, not a caregiver to someone who might never work in the industry again. What made it worse was how Bruce just seemed to accept it. He started looking into online courses and different career options, talking about how maybe this was a sign to try something new. A sign? The only sign I saw was that our life was falling apart, and he was giving up on everything we'd worked for. The real kicker came when I ran into Tanner at the gym. He owns several locations in the area and used to be one of my regular clients before everything happened. He asked about Bruce, of course. Everyone did. But then he started telling me about this opportunity to manage one of his new locations. Better pay, more responsibility, the chance to build my own fitness brand. Everything I'd been working toward. But I couldn't even think about taking it because I was too busy playing nurse to my husband, who seemed perfectly content to let our dreams slip away. 6 months into Bruce's recovery, and it felt like we were living completely different lives. He'd graduated from the wheelchair to a walker, then to a cane, but he moved like an old man. Physical therapy twice a week, but the progress was so slow, it was like watching paint dry. Meanwhile, my feed was full of friends traveling, getting promotions, buying new houses, living the life I thought I'd have by now. I tried to be understanding, I really did. But every time I looked at our bank account, or had to cancel plans because Bruce was having a bad pain day, I felt this knot in my stomach. He kept talking about teaching sound engineering or doing some kind of remote work. But let's be real, that's not the same as working with actual artists and being part of the scene. It's like he was settling for less, and expecting me to settle too. The worst part was how he'd get all quiet and withdrawn whenever I brought up money or our future. He'd just sit there with this kicked puppy look and say things like, "I'm trying my best, Becca." Like that was supposed to make everything better? His best wasn't paying for the lifestyle we used to have. I started spending more time at the gym. It was the only place where I still felt like myself. Posted more workout videos, tried to rebuild my following. Some days I'd stay late, just scrolling through social media, looking at all these fitness influencers living their best lives. Meanwhile, my home felt like a nursing facility. Tanner was always there, encouraging me to take on more clients, telling me I had potential. He got it. You know, he understood ambition, unlike Bruce, who seemed to have lost his completely. Sometimes Tanner would text me article links about fitness industry trends or social media marketing tips. Bruce noticed I was smiling at my phone more and made this comment about how nice it was to see me happy again. If he only knew, it was because someone still saw me as more than just a caregiver. Things really started getting tense when Bruce's disability caseworker suggested he look into permanent disability benefits. Like, was this really our life now? I remember sitting at our kitchen table, watching him scroll through online courses about audio production software and thinking, this isn't the man I married. The Bruce I fell for was confident, had goals, was going places. This version just seemed defeated. I tried dropping hints about maybe selling the house, moving somewhere cheaper. Bruce shut that down fast, talking about how we'd invested in this community and how his doctors were here. As if his doctors were more important than our financial future. That's when I started seriously considering Tanner's offer about the gym management position. The money would have been better than what I was making with personal training, but it would have meant even longer hours away from home. One night, I made the mistake of mentioning it to Bruce. He got this look on his face, part hurt, part angry, and asked if I was planning on abandoning him completely. Can you believe that? As if I hadn't already put my whole life on hold for him. We had our first real fight then. He actually said I was being selfish for wanting more than just getting by. Rich coming from someone who couldn't even dress himself properly some mornings. I did something stupid after that fight, maxed out our emergency credit card on a new wardrobe and some equipment for my home gym setup. I told myself it was an investment in my future, in my personal brand. When the statement came, Bruce lost it. Started talking about how we needed to have a serious discussion about our priorities. Like he had any right to lecture me about priorities when he couldn't even contribute to our household anymore. That's when everything really exploded. Bruce was sitting at our kitchen table, surrounded by medical bills and bank statements, looking like the world was ending. He started going on about how we needed to reevaluate our spending, and maybe I should cut back on non-essentials. Non-essentials? He was talking about my gym equipment, my professional wardrobe, things I needed for my career, as if his medical bills weren't the real reason we were bleeding money. I'd been holding everything in for months, trying to be the supportive wife everyone expected me to be, but something in me just snapped. The words came out before I could stop them. And honestly, I meant every single one. You're useless, I told him. I'm so tired of being married to a cripple who's given up on life. You just sit here all day, feeling sorry for yourself, while I have to put my entire life on hold. Do you know how embarrassing it is? Everyone asking about you, giving me those pitying looks. I didn't sign up for this. The look on his face, I'll never forget it, like I'd physically slapped him. He just sat there, completely still, and that made me even angrier. Even in this moment, he couldn't show some backbone. And you know what's really rich? I continued. You sitting there judging how I spend money when you can't even earn any. At least I'm trying to build something. What are you doing besides collecting disability checks and watching YouTube tutorials? That's when he finally showed some emotion. But not the way I expected. He looked at me with these cold eyes I'd never seen before and said, "Is that what you tell Tanner when you're at the gym until 10 p.m.? That you're building something?" I felt like the floor dropped out from under me. How did he know about my late nights at the gym? About Tanner? Nothing had happened. Not really. But the fact that he'd been keeping tabs on me made my blood boil. "Are you spying on me now?" I shot back. "Is that what you do all day while I'm out working? Checking my location? Probably reading my texts too? You're pathetic." "Your gym posts location tags, Rebecca," he said, still with that eerily calm voice. "And Tanner's wife is friends with Julie from the production company. Word gets around." I grabbed my keys and phone, needing to get out of there before I said something even worse, if that was possible. "You're paranoid and controlling," I told him. "This whole victim act is getting old. Maybe if you spent less time tracking your wife's movements and more time trying to get better, you wouldn't be such a deadweight." I stormed out and drove straight to my friend Kaylee's place. Posted a selfie in her bathroom mirror with some vague caption about removing toxic energy and knowing your worth. The comments started rolling in immediately. All these people telling me to stay strong, that I deserved better, that sometimes you have to put yourself first. None of them knew the real story, but their support felt good anyway. Tanner texted while I was at Kaylee's, asking if I wanted to grab dinner and talk. I told myself it wasn't wrong. I needed someone who understood me, who still saw me as more than just a caretaker. Over pasta, I vented about everything. The money problems, Bruce's attitude, how trapped I felt. Tanner was so understanding, touching my hand occasionally, telling me I deserved more. Nothing happened beyond that, but for the first time in months, I felt seen. When I finally went home 3 days later, Bruce had moved his things into the spare room. His pain medications and physical therapy equipment were neatly organized on the guest bathroom counter. But what really got to me was finding him on his laptop, researching disability benefits and career counseling programs. Even after everything I'd said, he was still just accepting it, still refusing to fight for our old life. I didn't expect things to fall apart as fast as they did. Word travels quick in the music industry, apparently. One by one, my regular clients with connections to the scene started canceling their training sessions. My Instagram following took a hit. Turns out Bruce's industry friends had been a bigger part of my audience than I realized. Even Tanner started getting weird, taking longer to respond to texts and suddenly being too busy to discuss the management position. It was like everyone was taking Bruce's side without even hearing my side of the story. Like, yes, I said some harsh things, but doesn't anyone understand how hard this has been for me? I'm the one who had to put my life on hold. I'm the one who lost everything we'd built. But try explaining that to people who've already decided you're the bad guy. The real kick in the teeth came when I showed up this local venue's charity event. I'd always been on the guest list before, and security acted like they'd never heard of me. Claimed the list was full. I could see some of our old friends inside. People who used to love having me at their parties. Now, they were all acting like I was some kind of monster. Meanwhile, Bruce was doing better. He'd started taking these online courses in audio production, spending hours with his headphones on, working on something on his laptop. His physical therapy was showing results too. He was moving around more easily, needed the cane less often. But instead of being happy about it, it just made me angry. Where was this determination when I needed him to fight for our lifestyle? I tried to apologize once, brought him coffee while he was studying. Told him I was sorry for what I said, that I'd been under a lot of stress. He just looked at me with these distant eyes and said, "I know you are, Rebecca." That's it. No acceptance, no acknowledgement of how hard things had been for me, nothing. Then he went right back to his laptop like I wasn't even there. Things got worse when he started talking about selling the house. Said we needed to downsize and manage our debt. As if moving into some cramped apartment would solve anything. I lost it, told him he was ruining my life all over again. That's when he pulled out this notebook. Turns out he'd been documenting everything. Every nasty comment I'd made, every time I'd stayed out late, every major purchase on our credit cards. Said his lawyer suggested keeping records. His lawyer. He'd been talking to a divorce lawyer this whole time, while I was still trying to figure out how to fix things. When I confronted him about it, he just shrugged and said, "You made your feelings pretty clear, Rebecca. I'm just making sure I protect myself this time." Protect himself? From me? As if I was the threat here, and not the circumstances that ruined our lives. I did what any normal person would do, posted a long rant on Facebook about how people show their true colors in hard times. Added some vague comments about emotional manipulation and gaslighting. But instead of the supportive comments I expected, people started calling me out. Someone even shared screenshots of my old posts bragging about Bruce's career and our lifestyle. The final straw was when I found out Bruce had been in touch with the college where he'd been taking online courses. They were interested in having him teach some audio production classes. Teaching. Like that was anything close to the career he'd had before. But he seemed excited about it, talking about stable income and benefits, like that made up for everything we'd lost. So here I am, 6 months later, sitting in my tiny one-bedroom apartment, trying to make sense of how everything turned out so wrong. Bruce actually got that teaching job at the college. From what I hear, he's doing pretty well for himself, teaching audio engineering classes during the day and doing remote mixing work for some indie bands on the side. Apparently, his students love him. Someone told me he even started a podcast about the music industry that's getting decent numbers. The divorce papers weren't a surprise, but the details were. That notebook of his? It was thorough. Every expensive purchase I'd made, every night I'd stayed out late, every cruel comment, all documented. His lawyer used it to argue against me getting any kind of spousal support. Called it financial abuse and emotional harassment of a disabled spouse. Can you believe that? As if I was the one who destroyed our marriage and not his injury. The house sold quickly. Turns out the market was better than I thought. Bruce used his share for a down payment on a smaller place closer to the college. I'm still trying to figure out how he managed to bounce back so fast, while I'm the one struggling. The gym where I worked got bought out by some corporate chain with connections to Bruce's industry friends. Suddenly, my position was eliminated. They claimed it had nothing to do with personal matters, but we all know what really happened. Tanner? He ghosted me completely after the divorce news got out. Turns out his wife had been friends with Bruce's lawyer the whole time. Now I'm working at a different gym across town, trying to rebuild my client base. Most of my old followers have unfollowed me. Apparently, people don't like it when you post about rising above negativity while trashing your disabled husband. The worst part is seeing Bruce move on. His Instagram isn't full of flashy industry events anymore, but he seems content. He posts about his students' projects, shares audio mixing tips, occasionally features some local band he's working with. His followers are actually engaging with his content, not just double tapping and moving on like they used to do with my gym selfies. He even started dating again, some music therapist he met through his physical therapy group. She looks boring, totally not his type, but his friends all love her apparently. Sometimes I catch myself checking his social media, trying to find signs that he's secretly miserable without me, but all I see is someone who took a horrible situation and made something new out of it. Meanwhile, I'm still here, trying to convince myself that I did what anyone would have done in my situation. My mom says I should try therapy, work on myself, or whatever, as if I'm the one who needs fixing. I'm dating this new guy now. He works in sales, drives a nice car, takes me to expensive restaurants. He doesn't know the whole story about Bruce, just my version where my ex-husband got injured and turned into a different person. It's easier that way. The other day, I drove past our old house. The new owners have completely changed the front yard, ripped out all the landscaping I'd carefully planned for my Instagram backdrop, kind of like how Bruce ripped out everything we'd built together when he decided to settle for this new, smaller life. People keep telling me I need to learn from this experience. But what exactly am I supposed to learn? That you can do everything right, be the supportive wife, put your life on hold, try to maintain some standards, and still end up being the bad guy? That everyone will take the injured person's side, even if they're the one who gave up on the life you were supposed to have together. I got an invitation to this year's music festival, the same one where Bruce had his accident. It came to my old email, probably an automated thing from before everything happened. Bruce will probably be there, not working behind the scenes like he was supposed to, but maybe sitting in the audience with his new girlfriend, or even teaching some workshop with his students. And I'll be here, in my apartment that's too small for decent Instagram photos, trying to convince my new followers that I'm living my best life. Sometimes I wonder if I should have done things differently. Maybe if I'd been more patient, or if I'd supported his new career choice, or if I hadn't said those things that night. But then I remember how he just gave up on everything we'd worked for. How he chose this safe, small life instead of fighting to get back what we had. And I think maybe we were both right in our own ways. He got what he wanted, stability, a new career, a simpler life. And I got my freedom. Even if it looks nothing like I thought it would.